that time. Come on. Hey, we are in the fight for the soul of our nation. We are in a fight for our kids and our grandkids, a fight that we can never imagine. I believe wholeheartedly Donald Trump and Butler County's J.D. Vance are the last chance to save our country politically. I'm afraid if we lose this one, it's going to take a civil war to save the country, and it will be saved.
So, Mike Breen, you're a fan favorite here. I am sure a lot of folks are wondering how you're going to respond to this. It's certainly not the first time there has been a call for civil war from the MAGA extremes, but I thought we were supposed to have a new tone in the Republican Party. Not sure where it went, not sure how long it lasted, but for about 2 seconds during the RNC, you heard a lot of people saying that the former president had seen the light and had changed his tone, and we were going to see a campaign of unification and an appeal to moderation. What did I miss?
Well, I think you missed the same memo that most of the Republican Party missed, Ken. Here we are again, you and I talking about crazy, but I think that I don't know who came up with that narrative in the media or put it there, but it lasted 30 seconds or something like that. I mean, even the convention itself, it's a strange thing to run on a unity ticket and then say you're going to have Hulk Hogan get up on stage and rip the American flag off his chest and show your name under it and everything else. I don't think they quite know what they're trying to do. But some of this just goes far beyond that. But on a more serious note, I think they've created a political movement that is built on this sense of violent grievance and impending apocalypse, the end of the republic, everything's at stake, your families, your kids, your livelihood, your faith, democracy, right? So I don't know that having built a movement like that, there's any way to turn it off. And it really shows you, I think, who people are when they join a movement like that and they aspire to lead it. And this is, I think, these are major tests of character. I look at J.D. Vance being introduced in that way, and I think, I pray to God that if you or I were being introduced running for major national office and the person introducing us said, if Ken Harbaugh or Mike Breen loses this election, the country will be plunged into civil war, instead of stepping on stage to the applause behind the line, you would say something about that. I think about John McCain responding to, attacks on who Barack Obama was as a person and saying, no, that's wrong. We disagree on policy, but that's wrong, right? What a contrast with these politicians we see today who are trying to ride this madhouse tiger to victory. And unfortunately, J.D. Vance, who's somebody that you and I both have a lot in common with in some ways, in terms of background and education and service, he's willing to take that as an applause line.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up that McCain moment, because it was not that long ago that there was an expectation in our politics on both sides about lines that you didn't cross. And you know what? I want to roll that clip to remind people of that moment and how it made us feel. Here's the clip.
We're scared. We're scared of an Obama presidency, and I'll tell you why. I'm concerned about someone that cohorts with domestic terrorists such as Ayers.
I have to tell you, he is a decent person and a person that you do not have to be scared as President of the United States. Now, look, I
got to ask you a question. I do not I can't trust Obama. I have read about him, and he's an Arab. He is not. No, ma'am. He's a decent family man, citizen that I just happen to have disagreements with on fundamental issues, and that's what this campaign is all about. He's not. Thank you.
J.D. Vance and John McCain have almost nothing in common in terms of character. And I think the selection of J.D. Vance was an appeal to that extremist vein that has now dominated the Republican Party on just about every issue. He was the most extreme vice presidential option that Trump could have picked from. And you're right, the real test is in a moment like we just saw on that stage in Ohio, where he had the opportunity to do what McCain did and not only chose to ignore it, but chose to bathe in the applause of people celebrating the idea of civil war. As an aside, I'm not going to dive too deep into this Ohio state senator's background because he's going to be at best a historical footnote, but he's not a vet. I suspect he's never been in a war zone, never seen a civil war up close like you and I have. It always seems to be the same type of guys.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's not vets, and it's mostly not vets, and it's certainly not vets who've had real combat experience who are saying this stuff. If you know what you're talking about, you wouldn't wish this on your worst enemy, the idea of a civil war, the idea of watching what happens to your country when it goes down the road to hell and neighbors start killing neighbors and everything else. And, for those who haven't, heard us say this before, you got to underscore it. Once you go down that road, getting back out of it, clawing your way back out of that pit of violence back toward the light is a generational project if you are lucky. Because once the violence starts, so do the cycles of retribution and vengeance and fear, and it gets out of control. It becomes personal. It becomes a monster you cannot feed enough until it's exhausted. Talk to Colombians or Yemenis or Yemenis, or take your pick. Iraq, Afghanistan, places we've both been. So this is the cheap bravado of the Twitter warrior, and the the B-string politician trying to make his bones by being more extreme, yelling "fight" to a crowd and talking about a war that he doesn't even know what he's talking about. But again, a politician who thinks he understands how to get ahead in Donald Trump's Republican Party, and that to me is the really sad part. And again, they keep making a calculated decision to make this the movement that they're leading. If you're Donald Trump's campaign manager, you got a candidate. Sorry, Ken, but here you got this candidate, right? You're thinking, I want to unify Americans, reassure them that my candidate, who has said and done more extreme things than I can name, tried to violently, incite a violent insurrection to overthrow democracy and avoid being thrown out of office, calls his political opponents vermin, talks about how he's going to be the retribution of his constituencies, right? Talks about throwing his opponents in prison. Maybe we should reassure everybody that it's going to be okay, even though it would be faint reassurance to anybody paying the remotest amount of attention for the last decade, right? But no, they go the complete opposite direction. And they pick the attack dog guy of all the attack dog guys.
Hi, everyone. It's Ken Harbaugh, and I need to take a short break here to ask all of you watching and listening for a quick favor. I am starting my own YouTube channel at team_Harbaugh, where I'll be posting videos regularly, including bonus content. It's a great place to find both Burn the Boats and Against All Enemies episodes, including the full archive. That's going to take a while to upload, but it's all going to live there. I could really use your help growing the channel. Please consider subscribing today. The link is in the show notes, or just search for team_Harbaugh on YouTube. I really appreciate the support. Everything we do here depends on you. Thanks so much. I think some people might criticize us for making too much of this Civil War talk and point to the fringes from where it seems to be mostly coming. But you don't have to look hard to find it within the mainstream of the Republican Party. You had the candidate for governor in North Carolina, was it, saying some people need some killing, Robinson. You have the head of the Heritage Foundation, the chief architect of Project 2025. You know what? I'm going to roll the clip. We've done it on the show before, but here he says that A second American Revolution is underway, and it'll be peaceful if the left allows it to be. Here's the clip.
We are in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be.
So, Mike, that is not some fringe figure on the far right. Not that Senator Lang from Ohio is a fringe figure. He's a state senator. But that's the head of the Heritage Foundation. That is someone who has Trump's ear, who Trump's senior advisors and staff have worked for. And this idea that they're going to create a second American Revolution, and if we get in the way, it's going to be bloody. I don't think you can any longer attribute that to the fringes of the Republican Party.
I think that's right. I mean, the Heritage Foundation is, a major think tank, is probably the flagship think tank of the Republican Party going back decades. Think of the donor dollars that go into that place. They own their own building in Washington, D.C. I mean, there's nothing fringe about the Heritage Foundation, at least from the perspective of institutional respectability on the right. And it's a shocking thing in some ways if you think about it with a historic perspective. The United States of America is a country with a lot of problems. Don't get me wrong. And it's a country where a lot of people are hurting. And that's real. But we haven't had an economic catastrophe here that's put people in breadlines. We haven't just, fought and lost a massive existential war for the country. Our troops are not engaged overseas, right? In large numbers right now. I mean, at least compared to the last 20 years. The list goes on. I mean, when you see countries kind of talk about the need for a civil war or the existential threat that we face unless this is our last chance, right? Usually they have some pretty damn serious problems that are making life miserable for everybody at a level that we're not even close. So there's a manufactured hysteria to this that, again, it's like part violent extremist movement and part con. It's just a grift, except it's incredibly dangerous. Maybe that just makes it an incredibly American phenomenon at the end of the day that you get a carnival barker leading a movement like this, but it's dangerous. It's really, really dangerous.
Yeah, Stuart Stevens makes this point a lot, that this is one of the few deep schisms in the history of democracies that's really over nothing. It's over imagined grievances. It's, as you said, manufactured, which in some ways it should make it really easy to address because the fundamentals are surmountable. But in other ways, it makes it really tough to address because we are coming at our issues from different realities.
I think that's it. We're living in different mental and cognitive universes with different facts and different truths. And I think that's the ultimate challenge. I mean, if we can get through the emergency of the next few months and have some time on the clock again as a republic to think more deeply about this, I do think we need more honesty from people in power and institutional power on the left as well as the right and the center. I think that's absolutely true. The only way to rebuild trust in institutions is through some tough conversations, and they have to be real and they have to be honest. We do need some reform because people are hurting in meaningful ways. But to me, the big piece of this is how do you get everybody back on the same page about what's real? Yeah. And that's tough. There's a lot more to say about it, and I hope we can have more of those conversations because there is a path, but it's a difficult path. And right now, again, I think you're right, Ken. We're swatting at illusions and talking about going to war with each other over differences that ought to be relatively straightforward to settle.
Speaking of going to war over differences, and I hate to ruin the party here because the Democrats are riding high with this feeling of unity and hope in the future and optimism, but we know what's coming. I mean, if the attacks on Joe Biden were bad for being old, we can just imagine what they are going to try to do to Vice President Harris, the first Black female to head a ticket. I think it's going to be savage. I think it'll backfire because most Americans see through it. But I also think most Americans don't realize the lengths to which the far right will go to tear down someone like that, who threatens everything that they stand for.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And, so does the Republican Speaker of the House, who, according to press accounts, had to come out and, remind his entire caucus today not to attack Vice President Harris on the basis of race.
The fact that reminder.
Stop it. Right.
Yeah.
Right. And doesn't seem to have been a very successful appeal to his caucus either. So I think you're right, Ken. I think this is going to get incredibly ugly. It's already incredibly ugly. It's already tipped over into violence. We've had one assassination attempt against the candidate already. And I think the threat that Vice President Harris poses to the Trump campaign strategy and to the right in general, and because of who she is, I think this is going to get darker before it gets lighter. But it's up to all of us to kind of pick up and get behind her and get behind her campaign, because the alternative is, well, this has gotten dark enough. But the alternative is a long generational fight that I really hope I don't have to hand off to my kids.
Yeah. Good note to end on. I'll keep the background noise in there because I actually love hearing kids on these interviews. We're not going to filter that out. Thanks, Mike, as always, for joining us. We'll be doing this a lot between now and November because I know folks want to hear from you. Thanks a bunch.
Thanks, Ken. Appreciate it.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Midas by signing up to the Midas Touch newsletter at MidasTouch.com/newsletter.